Good evening, everyone. Okay, we are burning the midnight oil 5, and we are at 1,822 days since Richard was forcibly removed from his barracks room on Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, which is a big deal. And his life was taken. His life was taken. And it is really part of this coup against President Trump that's being talked about. What was happening on Fort Bliss and in El Paso, Texas, directly interlocks, is interwoven with this coup. And so I'm going to explain that today. And of course, we're going to talk about um, El Mayo Zambada, the cartel leader that is now in American custody, federal custody in New York, and the war that has been, the civil war that has started, that was created by the betrayal of his godson, um, El Chapo's son, Guzman, right? Guzman. Um, so it is really uh, very, very interesting how this is all shows you that there is a lot going on. You know, you hear that people want to rest, and absolutely, we need to have some arrest. And we're with Ernest Christopher Grant. With Ernest Christopher Grant being arrested, that was really good news for us to see somebody being arrested. And of course, there is a lot of illegal migrants that have criminal records that have come over and um, just decided to be criminals, that they have been arrested and exported. So, and you see the strategy here right from the very beginning of Trump's presidency, the second time, how different that he is conducting his administration compared to the first time. The first time he depended more on the establishment. Now it's clearly strategy, and his agenda is definitely law enforcement. It is MAGA is Make America Great Again. You see the magnificent meetings the last two days. I spent most of my life living in Europe, living in the EU, knowing all the different monies, and then the changeover into the euro, and that turning into the Teuro. That was like a nickname given to the euro. We would say it was the Teuro because it was Toya, meaning expensive. The inflation from bringing that in was just incredible, very destructive to the European countries, all of them. And so we, lived most of our life over there. And of course, when Richard joined the military, and he became distinguished honor graduate, they announced him at his graduation ceremony for basic training as um, the distinguished honor graduate from Longford, Ireland, because that's where he partly grew up. He grew up in Germany and Ireland, and called Ireland home. That was where our home was, and so we have a really good sense of what's going on in Europe. And to see President Trump go to his property, his beautiful, beautiful property. And if you've ever been to Scotland, it's a very, very beautiful country. And of course, Turnberry is very historical. It is the battleground and birthplace of Robert the Bruce, who won independence, sovereignty from England way back. And against all odds, really, against all odds, he was the original Spider Man. And of course, he is the forefather of Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee was really the heir to Scotland, really. I mean, when he's the bluest blood that America has ever had. And when President Trump won his election in 2016, and there were all um, uh, these riots, and a big part of the riot was to take down Robert E. Lee statues, and most people didn't even know who Robert E. Lee was, really, um, because of the Civil War. They might just, oh, he was a racist. He was not a racist. Um, People have never read anything that Robert E. Lee wrote that took down these statues, or maybe they did and just hate President Trump so much because President Trump owns Turnberry, which is directly connected to Robert E. Lee. And maybe that was sending a message. Of course, President Trump knows the history of his property that is absolutely incredible. And so, when all that was happening, and I even said it online, um, uh, through these years, that I thought that was just an insult to President Trump. And so this goes into really the breaking news today, the breaking news where the DPS is releasing this montage. We're getting a montage of pictures and little video clips, uh, and it's not really evidence, because you need evidence in its context, right? Just like when you see President Trump at his property in his ballroom on Turnberry, the birthplace of uh, the battles against England, right? Against England, the Scottish battles against England. When you see Prime Minister Starmer go up and meet there with President Trump, um, it's just mind-boggling. It is just so victorious for President Trump. It really is. It's just very sweet victory, because they need us, right? They need us. The United States has a huge economy, and they need us. And when our economy gets unleashed, um, they want to be part of it. They absolutely want to be part of it. And so that's what President Trump is doing. You see that he's making deals everywhere, which is very important, because we cannot win um, uh, this ideology, right? The ideology of let's make our country great. Let's make our country get great, and it will benefit others, right? We can't win that without having a good economy, without giving something to offer for the people that live here and giving them the freedom. And so, of course, his focus is the economy, and especially because we have such debt and we have high interest rates on that debt. It was beautiful to see him go to the Federal Reserve and say, "We want lower rates," and you don't know what the hell you're doing, because you're spending money. Um, you're over budget on your build, $3.1 billion. You can't even handle your own expenses, and then you're trying to um, uh, well, you're the power behind everybody else, right? Everybody else. Why should we even trust you? Why should you even have this job? I think they need to be fired. I think well, they're public. They're not federal. Okay, even though they're called Federal Reserve, they're a private bank. I think we need to fire them, right? Um, and it was beautiful to see President Trump demonstrate why we need to fire them. So, and of course, you know, uh, this live stream, its main objective is to get justice for our son Richard and to have his remains returned to us. And President Trump talked about that today, um, eh, in regards to Israel, and Gaza and the um, what do you call it when you take someone hostage? The hostages. They they have hostages that are no longer alive, and that a mother wants her son. She knows that her son is no longer alive, and she wants her son's remains, and she doesn't want to stop at anything in order to get those remains. That means a lot to her. Dead or alive, they want their hostages back. That was the point that President Trump made today, and I totally understand this mother. I want Richard's remains. I want Richard's remains, and I want accountability. And we have three autopsy reports. We have all kinds of witness statements of them finding Richard's remains, having Richard's remains. You know, lots of evidence that they have Richard's remains. And so we want our son's remains, and we want accountability. And so that's our main goal. And in order to get that, we have had to do an investigation which connects the Walmart mass shooting case, our son's case, the targeting of Richard, and of course, what has happened to the cartel leader, El Mayo Zambada, Ismael El Mayo Zambada. What has happened to him? The betrayal, the betrayal to wrongly extradite him into the country, which is a big conversation in the whole thing, um, and that he is under uh, federal law enforcement control right now. Uh, and he's making deals. He's talking and he's releasing names. And it seems that President Scheinbaum is very, very upset about it because it's revealing the narco politicians, right? It's revealing the narco politicians. Which is directly connected to the operations in El Paso and on Fort Bliss, and which connects, of course, the Walmart mass shooting case, the victims in that case, because when you're talking about deaths, when you're talking about mortuary affairs, mortuary operations, funeral home operations. You're talking about insurance. You're talking about a lot of fraud being made on the sacrilege of Corpus Christi. A lot of money is being made on it, and that is being exposed, and it's you know, and uh, it would be so interesting to be a little fly on the wall, right, when they're talking to El Mayo, because he is 77 years old. We have heard that he's not, healthy. So what does he have to lose, right? What does he have to lose? Yeah, I think his biggest concern is meeting his maker, right? Is meeting his maker when you're about 80 years old. I think he's 77, 78 years old, and you're not doing well. You want to set things right. So hopefully he has provided information about Richard's remains, and we know that he has provided information about the operations that connect El Paso, Fort Bliss, and Chihuahua, Mexico. Um, So all that is coming out, and that is really good news. And it might really, they're talking right now in political circles that it might just totally destroy the Sinaloa cartel. And that will be the end of them. And, then I'm sure there's going to be another challenge. But the point that how this connects with the latest moves of the Walmart mass shooting case and Patrick Crusius and the release of the montages. I don't want to call it evidence because they don't show it in context, but they show it in these little snippets. Um, and because, yeah, they need to show the whole thing. But this latest one that came out that we were reviewing was the one of Patrick Crusius, supposedly Patrick Crusius. We're told it's Patrick Crusius. And I guess we have to believe that until, we see the forensics or whatever. But he's in the store, and it looks like a Hispanic woman, it seems to be a Hispanic woman, comes up to him to ask him for help, and he has to help retrieve something she wants to look at that is out of reach for her. But since he's tall, he can grab it for her. So this is the montage that they're showing, and clearly, um, the store, it doesn't look as busy as they said it was. It doesn't, to me. But what do I know? What do I know? I mean, everything, I've just read so many narratives, and every time I look at these videos, I'm like, that's not what we were told, right? That's not what we were told, because this is early in the morning on a Saturday morning, right? This is early in the morning on a Saturday morning. Um, that he goes in there first. So, I'm sure that it gets busier as the day goes by, but it starts happening at about 10:39. Um, and then he, surrenders twice, and the second surrender is at 11:06. So everything happens very, very, very quickly in there, um, in that time frame. And we've put up our um, what we have gathered as the timeline for the events, and that is constantly with new information, just like with this new information that he was there an hour before. Well, that sounds about right. So we'll adjust the timeline for that. But buying his oranges, helping this lady buying his oranges, being in that store for quite a while. It didn't look like he was casing it because he was on his phone, right? He was on his phone. It looked like he was communicating with somebody. So we would like to know who he's communicating with, right? Who is he on the phone with? Who is he communicating with? That would be our question. But the clear take that we've discussed after watching that is, because of course we have the Joe Spencer's audio tapes, and we have all the other information that he, wasn't supposed to really live through it. He was supposed to, according to the manifesto, according to his testimony and the interrogation, he was supposed to die. And according to Joe Spencer, with the two surrenders, he was supposed to die. That's why he went back. They were going to let him go. They were going to let him go. He was driving away, and he says, "Wait a minute, but I'm supposed to die, right? I'm supposed to die." And so he makes a U-turn, and he goes back, and he surrenders a second time, and nothing happens. He lives through it, right? He lives through it, and he's like, "I was supposed to die," So that was very, very interesting, because it's like a pre-planned narrative, right? A pre-planned step by step that he was given, and he wasn't supposed to live. But it tells you when you look at everyone that he's surrounded by, right? His family, the Mayellas, those that have protected him through all of this. Okay. So, and, and those who they're protecting, right? So they're really protecting the whole establishment there in El Paso, from Representative Veronica Escobar to Senator Cruz to the DA's office, all of those that are in the DA's office, all of those in the courthouse, all of those in the mag court, the El Paso magistrate, the magistrate court there, in the FBI, all those that are absolutely, we know, that are cartel tied and tied to the criminal trafficking, profiting off of illegal immigration. Okay. They profit off of these illegal migrants through their programs, through the USAID, through the law enforcement uh, contracts, through the ISD contracts, through even the busing, right? The busing of children, everything, uh, Fort Bliss, everything. They were profiting big money. All the criminal trafficking, they were making a mint off of illegal immigration. And so it really has just blown up the narrative when you put everything together. He was absolutely not a racist. The manifesto was a absolute um, a psyop for the public. Um, eh, because the exact opposite was the case. He's not a racist, and he was working for illegal migration, right? His family's very wealthy. I don't know how they got their wealth, but their family's very wealthy. He's not a 000 application for indigency, right? Indigency. That's not him. No, he and he says it in the interrogation. He doesn't even know who uses his car. He's been driving it for a while, but he doesn't pay for it. He doesn't take care of his own business. It's probably his mom's, it's probably his brother's. How did he buy the weapons? Somebody else probably bought it, paid for it. The credit card bill, because he really didn't have a real good job. He was working as Cinemark. So, he was being cared for. He was absolutely being cared for. He was probably, you know, um, pretty expensive, right? Because of his severe mental health conditions. He was pretty expensive. Someone else was buying his clothes, I'm sure. Someone else was buying his gas. Someone else was buying his food. Um, paying for the apartment, paying for, because we have it confirmed that he was living in San Antonio, right? That he was living in San Antonio. So this whole thing, there's so much that they have not told us that we have confirmed through hard evidence, through addresses, through phone numbers, through the connections, just like Patrick Crusius's brother, the elephant in the room. And I probably should have named this elephant in the room. But the El Mayo is very, very important to getting Richard's remains back. Okay, that's why I focus on that. The elephant in the room, being Brian Blake Crucius, who married the octopus with all the tentacles, right? That all the tentacles in the DA. I mean, I couldn't even list them all on that meme that I put up. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend it. With the DA's office, with the medical examiner, with Texas Tech University Health Science Center, with the court system, with the cartel. She has all the tentacles, and so what does that prove? Because those are all cartel connected, right? The Manny Chavira. Oh, I didn't even put that on there. I needed to put Manny Chavira on there. Manny Chavira on there with Luis Rene Diaz, with Bill Hicks, there's just so much that proves the evidence that we have is not a montage. The evidence we have is hard evidence that proves that uh, Patrick Crucius and the team around him and all the people around him and anyone that tried to manipulate this narrative, right, that never intended to have a death penalty on him. They intended for him to die, right? That's what they intended him to do. But all of them were working for keeping illegal migration. They were absolutely so that proves that he's not racist, right? That proves that that whole narrative in the manifesto was just a psyop, and that his group and everyone he's connected to, and it complies. He's not like some rebel. He has not shown one one inkling of being a rebel, right? You want some water? You want to go pee? Uh, you know, tell me about this. Tell me about that. Oh, well, we're gonna arrest you. Do you give away your rights? Um, you know, do you hate Mexicans? Do you hate Hispanics? Uh, you know, uh, they kept pushing that, and he's like, I just didn't want to cause trauma for my family. I didn't want to cause trauma for my brother and his girlfriend, you know, uh, which I'm sure he was fed that information, but um, nothing shows that he is some kind of rebel and a rebellion. And he's very compliant to his family and to his brother and to his brother's girlfriend and, to the DPS officers there. He's very compliant to all of them. And, so he's not going to separate from that group. And that group that he is in, everyone in that group, and they were all working to keep illegal immigration going. Um, and it wasn't because of the people. It wasn't because of the migrants. Okay, there's no love for the migrants there. The migrants were being just killed left and right, and they were profiting off of all the crime, all the severe crime, even the death. That it was creating a cartel market for, the funeral home business, the death scandal, the insurance scandal, the um, you name it. Uh, you know, they were they were absolutely taking advantage, and then the people would come in, the migrants would come into the country. Some of them, a lot of them criminals, but some of them that were coming in, really being hooked, and trying to find a better life. They were coming in as illegal, right? Just like Lilani Hart is illegal, right? Just like Mario Raskin Ortiz is illegal, and many more. I'm wondering if the nooses have some illegal there, right? Um, it is really clear that they didn't care about the people, because you don't want to have someone start their new life having to look over their shoulder because they're illegal. and then, having something against ICE because ICE might have the ability to deport you, right? Have the ability to kick you out because you're not in the country legally. So, they were really just trying to control people. They didn't like the people, but I wouldn't call them racist. I would call them that they were a cartel taking advantage of the system and the kindness of um, of the American people through this U.S. aid, any which way. And President Trump came in, and he was stopping the illegal migration, okay, because the country wanted the borders secure. And Richard was a witness to the criminal trafficking going on, that, of course, and the illegal immigration policies. He was helping President Trump. Okay. He was President Trump's whistleblower. And so that's why he was targeted also. But President Trump, absolutely, and thank God he's lived through it. He was absolutely the target, and his reelection campaign, the target. And, if it was Richard being the target, I would tell everyone, right? Because that's where the evidence would point to. And the evidence does point to that Richard was a target. Of course it does. But the evidence shows that their main target was to stop President Trump from winning re-election. It was election interference. That's what it was. And so, you know, uh, and that's because they were trying to protect illegal immigration. And Patrick Crusius was part of that, and his group was part of that. So, of course, he's not racist, he's not a white supremacist. That was all used to form a false narrative to be used against President Trump and his reelection. And as the scrutiny for everything that we've been doing started to happen, and of course, El Mayo is absolutely connected through Ray Velarde to Richard's case. Um, we believe that there was a deal made to betray El Mayo and bring him in this country, um, extradite him, and now he is in the custody of federal agents, and he's talking. And so we'll see what happens. But I think the whole thing around him is kind of the way he came in. Uh, it was illegal. That's what the evidence looks like. And as much as I want him to be legally arrested, I think he was illegally arrested. Um, from what we have gathered from the evidence, and that's no good. That's no good at all. Um, so, and he is key. He is really key to getting answers about Richard. He knows all about Richard. And so to get Richard's remains, El Mayo is the key. Um, and he was betrayed. He was betrayed by his partner. And so this is why the Civil War has absolutely, when you're betrayed like that, um, especially when you're a killer like he is, now of course, Al Mayo, he didn't get in his position from being a buttercup, right? He is ruthless, and even though he's older now, I can't even imagine what he was like when he was younger. And, so he is definitely not taking it lightly that he was betrayed. So, yeah, we'll see what kind of answers that we get out of this. We ask for your prayers for this, because they mean it, of course, for evil. The things that he's done, they've meant for evil, but God means it for good. And um, he can make lemonade out of lemons, right? And we could get accountability. We could get our son's remains. We'll see. We'll see what all happens. The big thing that the media is not talking about this, right? The media is not putting this all together, and they're not talking about the elephant in the room, which is Brian Blake Crucius. Him living in El Paso all this time with a CPA, with dating, and we see that through Patrick Crucius that in 2019 he was long dating Alexis Mayella, that Patrick Crucius' brother, Brian Blake Crucius, was dating Alexis Mayella, and then they ended up getting married and living in El Paso throughout this whole time, and just letting the lies, letting the false narrative, so they're part of this group. Okay, they're just part of this group, and all the evidence confirms that they're part of the group, and they're profiting very handily on it and getting all kinds of little perks from it. And so, they're for their young age, they're being very tidily taken care of, right? Which also shows you that it's absolutely criminal what they've done. It's absolutely criminal, and they're of course groomed into it by their families, and that shows you what that Patrick Crucius was also groomed into this by families. So the truth is coming out, and the media doesn't want to talk about the elephant in the room, and that the elephant married the octopus, right? The octopus with all the tentacles, with all the tentacles. They don't want to talk about it. So here we are on Find Richard Halliday, for justice for Richard Halliday. We're the ones that are giving you the breaking news every day. We're the ones that are trying very, very hard to give you all the truth, as the evidence confirms it. And so we thank you so much, Anicia. Thank you so much again for your prayers and your love. And we will absolutely be back tomorrow